give me some thoughts here. When Andrew Coates first approaches you about this new hot podcast you gotta be on as a guest, and then you see me, what were you thinking?
I was like, this is different. That's the first thing I said. I said, this is different. I've never done an interview with a puppet before.
Yeah, I'm hoping to be a bucket list for everyone. It's an exclusive. Lee's very first time getting interviewed by Brick Headstrong. Brick Headstrong! Brick Headstrong! He's got the reps to you! He's got the reps to you! Brick Headstrong! Lee, welcome to Reppin' Fitness.
How's it going, Brick?
Oh, it's going great. I've already been to the gym today, got my reps in, feeling good. Now, before we get started, whoa, I'm gonna use that as a quote. I'm gonna put it on my website. But anyways, hey Lee, you on your website, leeboyce.com, right? You describe yourself simply as a trainer who helps people work for results. Can you share more about your journey into the fitness industry and what initially inspired you to get into training?
Yeah, so, I started as a trainer back in '07, but I'll even go back further than that and talk about high school. So, I played every sport. I played all kinds of sports and stuff like that. This is the cool thing about, the unique thing is that a lot of trainers will have a story, they'll have some kind of story. Right. I overcame this, or I had a radical transformation, or I was a painfully shy and timid person who was bullied left, right, and center. I'm not saying that I had none of those things, but not enough to really have a story or talk about that enough or make that some kind of a thing I had to overcome, right? So my story, my background is that I played a lot of sports growing up, and I was into track and field, basketball, volleyball, football, baseball back in school. And I ended up.
What was your favorite?
My favorite was track and field. It was basketball, but then track and field I became a little bit more passionate about, and I took that to university level. So
Nice.
While I was still in school, and playing all those sports and stuff like that, I realized in grade 11, I believe it was, that you could take a course called exercise science. And I was like, man, that's cool. I've got to figure out more about that. So I took the course, loved the course, and I did well in the course. Then I went to a new school in my final year, and they offered it again. So I was like, let me take it again. So I took it again, also did well in it. And over that course of time, I decided to gravitate toward kinesiology as well, and as a field of study for university. So I got recruited to the track and field team at the university, and I studied that at the same time. And so while I was in school, I decided, I want to be a chiropractor. That's what I really want to do.
Whoa.
And then I was thinking about it. I was like, you know what? No, maybe not a chiropractor. Maybe a personal trainer, because I don't necessarily want to work with constantly injured individuals. I'd rather be on a field where working with healthier individuals who are playing the sport or doing lifts and all that stuff. I want to be on the gym floor with them. And so that's what brought me toward it. And, I was 20 years old, got my first certification, and the rest is kind of history at the same time. I was still in school at the same time as well. And so now we're in year number 18 going into.
Wow, 18 years. That's
right.
Incredible. I love that story. You have your own story. You just shared it. And I think that's important, because the way you told me that story, you followed a calling. You weren't necessarily sure where you were going, but you just kind of got there, and now you're here.
That's true.
That's great.
So, I tell people to lean into that, you don't need some kind of a story of some kind of triumph for overcoming this gigantic obstacle or whatnot. Like you said, even though I say that it's not a story, it is a story in and of itself, right? Followed a calling, and that's what I wanted to do. Actually, the seed was truly planted back in grade 11, not from learning about exercise science course, but also a friend of mine who was on the hockey team. He was like, hey, Lee, I've got a personal trainer to help me with my hockey. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, it's at this new gym. You got to check it out. You want to come in and jump in on a session with me? I was like, okay, if it's allowed. So I go in, and I just looked up to that trainer. It was a great session. I looked up to that trainer so much. I was 16 years old. And so I was like, man, that sounds like such a cool thing to do, such a cool job. So the seed was planted just then as a teenager. And then when I found out about exercise science and all that, the rest was history.
Wow, that's very interesting. It's just kind of always been there.
Yeah.
You kind of knew. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Now, I saw recently you wrote an article with Andrew Coates for Men's Health magazine about gym etiquette.
That's right.
That's a big topic for Brick. I love talking about this. Just the other day, I made a video about how people are on their phone all the time, just like hogging machines. Not waiting their turn. They're just, oh, too bad. You gotta wait, you know. Now, one thing you mentioned, I don't know whose idea was, but can you explain what Godzilla spots are?
So it was talking about how you sort of deal with being in beast mode at the gym, and that might include
Oh,
things where you abandon the proper etiquette, that like being loud and noisy and grunting and grumbling,
yeah,
and also
right.
dropping the weights at the end of your set. I remember perfectly.
Ah,
And so I do believe that if the intensity is there, that there might be a time and place to get a little bit more intense, maybe get a little more aggressive and a little bit less careful where that's concerned. But in a gym, you've got to read the room. Number one, you got to know what kind of a space it sort of invites this stuff in the first place. Are you working out at a grittier, powerlifting, bodybuilding style gym, or is it your real mom and pop, Globo type of gym, right? And that's the real
huh?
question. Because if it's at your mom and pop gym and you don't have a demographic that's going to sort of take well to that, it's worthwhile to ask the question of what are you even really doing there? And if you are there, how are
Right.
you going to train there, right? The first thought or franchise that comes to mind would be the Planet Fitness, right? Where they have
Oh yeah.
alarm, they have all that stuff. And people would always hate on that, right? People in my shoes, especially, would kind of hate on that and be like, man, this isn't a gym for training. This is a gym for whatever.
Ah,
And so it's like, but at the end of the day, if the goal is to get more people active and to be as inclusive as possible where all that's concerned, then maybe it's not the worst thing for a person, right? Maybe it's not for you, but it could be for someone else who would otherwise not go at all because of intimidation. So all that to say that there's definitely a time and place, and being in that Godzilla mode, it has to come with the right surroundings.
oh yeah, yeah. I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. And it's funny, Brick never looked at Planet Fitness in this light before, where they're just trying to encourage people, the average person, to get in the gym and not be afraid of it. That's kind of like what I'm doing. You know, I want to talk to the average person and let them know, hey, it's okay to talk about the gym. Maybe you don't know much, you feel a little weird about asking questions, but that's why I'm here.
That's
Now
right.
you can say, hey, did you see that really jacked puppet named Brick Headstrong? You know, they could just be like, oh yeah, it's stupid, but really, it got them talking about going to the gym. So
That's right.
that's the deal.
So if you talk to me, I'm 37 years old. If you talk to me when I was
Oh,
26 years old, I tell you, I would not have had the same outlook on places like Planet Fitness that I do now.
right, right,
You know, and I think that a lot of that does come just with time and just life experience and so on, and maybe even a couple of setbacks to speak for too. But when you realize how important it is to sort of have that welcoming and accommodating atmosphere toward fitness and the access of it for the general population, you might change your outlook on a lot of stuff. If you're somebody who thinks that, okay, you only need to lift this kind of way, or you shouldn't do cardio, or you shouldn't be here to train if you're not going to train hard, you shouldn't be here at all if you're not going to train, period. The gym can be a facilitator to a lot of different things for people, not only physically, but mentally as well. And it's a very important point for people to not overlook or to berate. It's very important for people to recognize and respect that.
yeah, I agree with you. I think you mentioned somewhere in there that you're 37, right? And we're about the same age, probably about the same height. But you also mentioned that your training philosophy as you got older, it kind of shifted, especially as you entered your mid 30s.
Yeah.
Now, can you elaborate on how your approach has evolved and what new insights you've gained?
Yeah. So I would even say before my mid 30s, to be honest with you,
Huh?
because when I was 30 years old, I had a pretty big injury that I had to deal with that really put me out for quite some time. And
What happened?
that was to my knees. I ruptured both my
Oh,
patellar tendons at the same time when I was playing a game of basketball. And so
oof.
I had already been kind of dabbling with a little bit more body weight training at the time, but I was still very heavy in the habit of lifting heavy very frequently with the big compound movements like bench, squat, deadlift, right? Done pretty conventionally too. And so the fact that this happened and the fact that I was really brought down to literally zero, I was in a wheelchair for a couple of months, let alone being
Oh,
like braces for
wow.
much longer. And so getting the process of getting to walk again and all that sort of thing, and then finally gaining some form of range of motion with my little twig legs when they came back out of it and getting to the gym, it turned me into thinking, okay, well, do I really want to go back to strictly doing that, or do I want to diversify my approach? So my approach was very much, okay, big lifts are what matters the most. And today, and back in my 30s, early 30s, and so on, it's much more of, calisthenic, mobility based, single leg based, balance based, thinking about all those 11 components of fitness, which, strength, flexibility, power, speed, coordination, reaction time, balance, cardiorespiratory capacity, muscular endurance. All those things matter so much to somebody's total fitness and even body composition too. I was a bigger boy back then, and so I even cut down a little bit and still working on that as we speak. I don't want to carry around too much mass as I get older and older because it's not going to really do too much benefit for me past a certain point. So you got to realize a lot of those things. And just if you really want longevity and health and to feel good as well as look good, you got to think about all that stuff.
So you mentioned you're trying to get into a little bit better shape still. Now, what do you think about cardio?
I used to think that cardio was, you get it through your workouts and your training and just lift weights faster and all those different things that people will say, those buzz phrases that people will use. And now I think that it's important.
Wait a minute, you're telling me that's not true?
I'll tell you what is true is that cardiac is important, right?
Oh, okay.
So if you want to get into that zone 2 kind of cardio where you're working for, let's say, half hour, 40 minutes even, at an even heart rate, for a guy my age, it might be somewhere around 140 beats per minute. That would be a great place for you to try to explore, because a lot of times weight training or lifting weights faster or stuff like that are things that usually spike and then ebb your heart rate in a minor, like an interval style, right? And so instead, what you want to think about is keeping that consistent for as long as you want to do a full duration, maybe 30, 40 minutes, and you're going to get some good benefits aerobically from that, and it's good for you.
That's a good point. I was only joking a little bit about that cardio. I actually really like getting some steps in, because steps are reps too.
That's right.
I think people need to treat them that way.
That's right.
Because they're important for your day-to-day life,
Yeah.
So, as we get older, the fitness world changes. What are you seeing as the biggest challenges you see in the industry today? And how do you think they affect the culture of fitness?
The biggest challenges in the industry today, I think that it's not even that it's one particular thing. I think it's more or less the entire the entity that is social media and what it can make fitness represent. Right? Social media is great for a lot of purposes, and it's laced with a lot of people out there who are sending messages that say, this isn't real life, and we shouldn't only look at things through the lens of a screen or whatever. So there's a lot of good messages, but at the same time, you're using the very medium of social media to get your message out and make it viral, right? And so we can almost get in our own way or miss the forest for the trees in terms of what this should all kind of be about and what fitness should represent to us and to everybody else, what the culture should sort of be. And so from that perspective, I think that just social media and its presence can have the potential to be an adverse effect on somebody who's sincerely searching for goals. And it can also influx people with way too much competing information. So it's hard for a novice person to sift through a lot of that information. And I'll tell you, like, I don't follow a million people on my social, on my Instagram, for example, and I don't spend hours and hours on it either. And I'm somebody who knows a thing or two about fitness and who tries to teach and educate. So in my newsfeed, when I see the amount of information that comes at me just based on the things that are from people that I follow, like, I can get a little bit overwhelmed. So I can only imagine somebody's following 4,000 accounts or something like that, and there's just so much flying at them and how much stuff that contradicts the other person's stuff and whatnot. You could get a case of analysis paralysis, for God's sakes,
Oh, I don't want that.
No one wants that. It can be something that can overwhelm the masses, and it could be something that can do more harm than good, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like I find myself saying this every episode, but the things that they're looking for are all the wrong things. They're trying to find that 30-day fix. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. I feel like they need to understand, it takes time. Now, how do you help your clients balance the need for immediate results with the importance of long-term health and fitness?
Well, I'm a pretty straight shooter when it comes to talking to clients, especially in-person clients. I tell them straight up, like, I'm not going to be able to fix you right away. And a lot of people who sign up with me, they have some kind of a pre-existing expectation that, because I go by packages, right? So I'll go by 10 workouts or 20 workouts or whatever.
Nice.
So what do you expect me to receive by the end of the 10th workout? By 10 workouts, it's like, nothing, like next to nothing. I'm not going to say that you're not going to be further along in your journey than you were when you started. You're going to feel better, I'm sure. You're going to have some great strides that we make in areas that probably don't have much to do with what your actual goals are just yet. So give me 2 days per week of your time for a year. for example, and let's see
Oh,
what we can accomplish. That's the real. It didn't take you 60 days to get to the place you're at with your injuries, or to get to the place where you're at with your body comp, or to get to the place where you're at with your strength or lack thereof. It didn't take you 60 days. That took a cumulative amount of time for that to start becoming a problem for you that you needed to address. So with that being said, why do you think we're going to reverse all of that after 10 workouts or 20? Let's take the year, let's focus on this for the year, and then let's check back in after that time. Assuming the discipline is there, then you're going to see results you're looking for.
now I might already have the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyways. How long do you think it really takes for somebody to form a habit?
Man, to form a habit, I would say, I'm going to err on the side of safety and say that 6 months of practice uninterrupted would be a good
6 months,
amount
yeah.
of time. The 6 months.
You're saying, hey, you missed a couple days in there. Maybe you need to go an extra week. Or are you saying like, that's going 4 times, 5 times a week, all the way through, no breaks?
I don't even think that it takes that much in order for somebody to
Oh,
elicit
okay.
change. I'd drop it back. I would say, because I'll tell a lot of people, for example, if they're struggling with consistency, maybe they're around the gym, maybe they've been in the gym, maybe they've gone hard for a bit and then they've fallen right off the wagon. Well, I know people, for example, who do know a thing or two about training, who will go hard for like 6 weeks, every single day, first thing in the morning, all kinds of stuff like that. And then life gets in the way, they fall off a cliff. And so, to people like that and to clients like that, I will say, you know what? Apply the simplest method possible. The simplest method being, okay, you're going to crush every other day. I want you, if you went to the gym yesterday, you're not going today. If you went to the gym yesterday, you're not going today. If you go to the gym today, you're not going tomorrow, type of thing, right? You do that consistently, and it's an easy way to adhere to a schedule because you don't have to think about anything. You just have to go every other day. And if you adhere to that, and you do that for the first 2 months, let's say, then we're going to add one more element to this. We're going to add one element of your diet. You're going to try to drink 4 bottles of water or whatever.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
You crush that for a whole month. On top of that, then we're going to add one more thing. You're going to have a vegetable with every meal. And then you crush that, and then we go forward from there. And those baby steps can eventually lead to building habits, like you're talking about, that are going to make somebody really see results and feel better about themselves, build confidence, and not beat themselves up if they fall off, because they could get right back on again.
Yeah, I believe there's a book called Atomic Habits, right? Kind of preaches that same way, where you take little bits and pieces at a time, you build them up.
So going back to the social media thing and how contradictory or how confusing it can be for people to take in all of that information, something that they can really benefit from would be, of course, lowering the amount of following that they do. I think that that's very important.
Right, right.
And the second thing would be, okay, if you need resources or if you need, certain expertise, then you could either hire that in person. And if you can't afford that, or if that's something that's not on your plate, then you limit the amount of information that you take in to maybe a couple of good trusted sources out there. And it's pretty easy to vet who knows what they're talking about and who doesn't, right? If somebody is there and they're using their body first and foremost as the only selling point to their stuff, and they're selling generic programming and whatnot, it probably isn't somebody who has your best interest in heart or in first mind. Right?
Right.
Now, if somebody's got information that is pretty backed with some good science, they make sense when they're speaking, and they have their knowledge on first display. That's going to be something that's a little bit more reasonable. Now, with that being said, trading is pretty easy. In the big picture, training and getting results and the formula towards such results is pretty easy. We start dissecting things at another level when we get into that intermediate to advanced territory. Taking your gains to the next level has been the subject matter of a lot of debate and a lot of a little bit of friction amongst fitness professionals. But getting initial results is very straightforward. And so no matter what method, whatever dietary principles you apply, whatever training principles you apply, and so on, if you stick with them, they're probably going to yield results for you as long as you do them well, right? And so that's the case that people have to understand, is that the real factor that is the common denominator of all of this stuff is just time and consistency. And if you adhere to that, most things are going to work for you.
Bingo. Bingo. I've been trying to preach that all the time, and it's great to hear it from you, because now I'm blurry. Hold on. Okay, I'm done being blurry. Because now I got the proof. Lee Boyce backs it up. You got consistency, you got the time, you got the reps. And that's my saying. I say, let's get those reps, right? But I saw you have your own. It's real training, no nonsense, right?
That's right. That's right. Real training and no nonsense. I sort of try to cut through the clutter when it comes to that sort of thing. And even on my blog, I don't use it necessarily to always talk about direct training content. I actually never use it for direct training content. What I use the blog for is to talk about the condition of the fitness space as a culture, talking about the socio-cultural aspects and how those things are affecting you as a person who's getting into or currently in the fitness world, how our actions can affect other people, how the industry can affect a human being, all that sort of stuff. And it usually makes for a pretty interesting and fairly editorial based read. And I like doing that kind of content because it usually makes the reader think and think counterintuitively as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that because recently I got myself into mindfulness, getting one with my mind and my body, because it's important, especially for your focus and understanding why are you even here? What's the point? You know?
Yeah.
So, actually, this is new. One sec. What's that? Okay. Sorry about that. Apparently, I have a viewer question submitted today. Let me get this real quick. This viewer asks, why do you send me so many videos of people injuring themselves?
You know what? I think that injuries in the weight training world, especially fail videos outside the weight training world, which is, I know who sent me that message, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Injuries in the weight training world are things we should look out for. Now, most of the injuries that are that are outside the weight training world is what this person is referring to particularly.
Oh.
And those can be hilarious, man. Those are cognizant decisions that people will make that will backfire on them horribly, that makes you wonder why you would even decide to do that to yourself in the first place when you know what the outcome's going to be. And boy, are they funny.
Do you have a page? Do you have a page you follow for this stuff?
I actually don't follow. I see them pop up in my newsfeed from time to time, and I got
me too.
And I gotta share.
Oh man, I gotta get in that group. I love that stuff. It's so funny. But for those at home that were unaware, that was talking about Melody Schoenfield. You guys wrote a book together.
We did. That's why she's chirping me right now. Melody and I wrote Strength Training for All Body Types, and it is the science of lifting and levers, and that's published by Human Kinetics. It's been out since 2022, late, and so it's been going into the second year that it's been published now, and it's a great book. It's just a great book talking about different anthropometry, different leverages, different body types and proportions, and how strength training affects those proportions, all those combinations, and how all those combinations can affect our decisions. When it comes to strength training, and when it comes to program design, when it comes to exercise selection, what does our body tell us about the exercise that we are choosing? Is there a body that is maybe better suited for certain lifts compared to other lifts? It's a fantastic set of questions to ask, and that goes into a deep dive over 14 chapters and 288 pages.
That's incredible. Now, I don't want to get all the spoilers, but I am going to ask Melody a similar question. I'm going to ask her for all the short people, but for all of us tall people, I do see you post a couple videos here and there, helping people out, understanding how you make modifications to how you work out due to the size of your arms, how long they are,
Yeah.
What's something actionable you could tell people that are our size?
So you're talking about for taller lifters?
Oh, yeah. I meant us, you and I.
So taller lifters as a whole, they have to be aware of a couple of things. First and foremost, of course, work is the definition. The definition of work in a physics standpoint is force times distance. So if you think about that, that means that if you're moving a load, let's call it 200 pounds in a squat, let's say, and you have to go to full range of motion, assuming that you're going to go all the way down, that means that your work is going to be a product of the distance that that bar travels toward the floor times the amount of weight that you're lifting. So that doesn't sound like it would be too complicated, but if you take a 6'6" lifter and you put him next to a 5'4" lifter and you make them lift the same amount of weight or something very close to each other, and they go down to full depth for what their body type is, that 6'6" lifter has a lot more work that they're doing based on that calculation. So you multiply that by X amount of reps. Then you multiply that by X amount of sets. And then you insert the rest interval that might be fixed for each person. We realize that these two people cannot train the same way, and they can't be expected to sustain themselves the same way either. And so, with that being said, we got to modify our programming to reflect that the amount of work that one person is doing is going to be greater than the amount of work that another person of a different body type might be doing. That tall lifter might be traveling down with the hip 2.5 feet to get to the rock bottom, whereas that person who is shorter, he might have to only go down 18 inches, 1.5 feet to get down to the same rock bottom. That's way less time spent under tension. That's way less work. And so if you think that 60 seconds break is going to be perfect for both of them, we'd be missing the whole mark with that.
That's an excellent point. Now, what's next for you?
So as far as travel goes, like I'm back to the college right now. I'm teaching, so I'm taking over a semester. So I'm running a course in exercise prescription level 1. So that's going until the end of the summer, and then I'm probably going to have more work at the college from September and onwards because it doesn't usually stop. And then on top of that, I've got a lot of speaking stuff. I've done a few speaking events already this year in Toronto. I'm heading out to a university to go and speak in St. Catharines later next month. I have CanFit Pro, which is a big global conference in Toronto next month as well. And then in September, I'm going with my boy Andrew. He's going to be the Evolve Strength Summit. So I'm going to be speaking there for the third of 3 years. The next month after that. And so it's great because I get to see Andrew, I get to see Luca, I get to see a lot of people that are sort of like my close friends in the industry. And so they're all going to be at that event. And then the next month, I'm going to Luca's event, which is in Seattle. Right. And so I'm going to see Andrew there. I'm going to see Luca. It's going to be pretty awesome. So 3 months in a row, I get to hang out with all of like my favorite people, for lack of a better term, favorite people. And then later on, Mel and I are going to go to Australia because we're going to go and present there a workshop, a clinic that's going to be 2 days exclusive just for us that we're delivering out there in Perth. And that's going to be all about the book content and talking about body type specificity and training.
Amazing. Yeah. Now, where can listeners find out more about you, your work, and if they wanted to connect with you?
Yeah, so it's Coach Lee Boyce is my handle for Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And outside of that, my website is leeboyce.com.
Nice. So that's leeboyce.com. I'm going to take this off air, and we're going to talk a little bit about how you can get Brick, the centerfold, in one of those magazines, because I think that's ultimately what's stopping me from getting into Mr. Olympia right now. But I digress. Hey, it's been great. Thank you so much for being a guest on Rep and Fitness.
100%. I had a great time. That was fantastic.
And we'll see you next time on the next Repisode. Brick Headstrong!